And we're live. Welcome back to another episode of the iFilmmaker podcast. My name is Ariel Martinez, and with us is Mr. Saratelli. Welcome back.
What's going on, buddy?
Yeah, we haven't done one in like a week and a half.
Did I miss the last one? I can't even keep track.
No, we did one together, but what I had done was I did a Ask Me Something segment. I thought it was really cool to do. Like I did it just for video purposes. And then just a post on the IGTV thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then I figured, man, I'm going to miss a week of not posting anything on iFilmmaker. So let me just post that audio as a segment. I thought that that'd be cool to do every now and then to have a more personal question Q&A. That'd be pretty cool. If you ever want to do one, we can post your own as well.
Yeah, I saw your IGTV. I haven't gotten into that yet, but I saw your post.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting. I've been thinking about different ways to try and I guess use it and without it being too distracting or get too far away from my normal habits, more or less.
It's just a whole nother, I feel like it's a whole nother production if I were to take it on top of the YouTube stuff, on top of this. It's just
it definitely is, man. It definitely is. But so before we get back into it, I just want to say hello to everyone that's joining us live. We got Dean Christie, Joey, Matthew, Daka. Welcome back, guys.
Welcome, first timer.
He's a first timer here on the show. Welcome to the live segment of the iFilmmaker podcast. And for those of you that are listening to this on iTunes or SoundCloud or Google Play and any other platforms that we're on, we invite you guys to join us live. You can go over to the iFilmmaker YouTube channel, hit subscribe, make sure that little notification bell is clicked so that you can get notified every time we go live, because it's usually sporadic. I've been trying to make events and kind of make you guys aware of when we're going to go live by posting via Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, etc. But yeah, we're trying to keep up with the demand of freelance work. That's usually kind of last minute stuff all the time. So thank you guys for joining us live. So we've been pretty busy. We've been pretty busy. I just got back from a 1 week long trip to, I was actually like by your neck of the woods.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. You texted me trying to see what's going on, and I had a nice family day going on, so it took me a little while to get back to you. By the time I got back to you, you were already out of town, which is a bummer, but I had no idea you were coming through.
Yeah, man. It was very, very fast. We literally had to go get interviews. This was like a trip of just interviews and B-roll and just move on. Because we're trying to finalize. This was the very final trip of A Horse of a Different Color feature documentary that I've been working on with the other director, Nick Parsons. Mm-hmm. And it was just like 5 days of just location, interview, B-roll, and out of there. The last stop of the trip was in Boston, Massachusetts, which is where Perkins School for the Blind is. And we did several interviews there. Took all day. And we got a lot of good drone shots finally of the school before we had to rely on like what they had. But we were able to get our own. It was a lot of fun, man. It was a lot of fun. Very hectic. I had to definitely organize the footage properly. But yeah, that's why actually, like we were in Jersey. We're in Philly. We were in Jersey. I forgot the exact cities that we had to be into for the interviews. But
was it in South Jersey? Down by Philly?
It was from Philly. Then we moved on over there, and then we actually went to New York by mistake. We took a wrong turn. We took a wrong turn. Huh?
So you must have been up north then if you ended up in the city.
Yeah. I think it was North Philly. I think it was North Philly or North Jersey. Sorry.
North Jersey, yeah.
Yeah, and but yeah, it was definitely interesting. We went through New York by accident, and it was just such a bad time because we were supposed to be at a hotel closer to Boston by like 1, We ended up getting there like at 2:30 because we detoured in New York and found ourselves in heavy traffic and all that. So, but anyways, it was a good trip. It was a good trip.
How far along are you guys? Well, are you finishing up production on that? And
yeah. So, man, it's one of the issues that's been going on, right? And it's funny because it's almost like for me, it was almost like what happened with us in Zion. I didn't know that we had a story, right? I knew that there was a story to tell, but I'm trying to figure out, and this is where Nick and I were kind of like we needed to communicate better. And we're kind of back and forth. This is Nick's first time, doing a full-on feature documentary, right? And well, I'm sorry. This is Nick's first time doing a documentary, period. This is my first time doing a full-on feature documentary. But I do have experience in documentary and storytelling, right? And so we're trying to communicate. So he's telling me bits and pieces of the story. And what I kind of explained to him was like, he's telling me a lot of stories of our subject, which is Jeff Watkins. And if you haven't watched the trailer, you can go and check that out over at a horse of a different color movie.com. We have the trailer, actually our first teaser trailer right there. And so what I basically explained to him is like, you like, he's giving me a lot of pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, right? Imagine a big jigsaw puzzle. He gives me a lot of individual pieces, but I don't see the full picture yet, right? So all I know is that Jeff Watkins is a person with disabilities, and that's the story. But to me, I'm like, that's not a story yet. We need something that kind of attracts people and whatnot. And I'm trying to find those hooks, and
that's what's crazy about documentaries is if it's a documentary based on something that's already happened, a past event or a person that has gone through something and that's already in place, then you have a story, what it is. And you kind of have to dig for archives. You can do interviews currently so that people can talk about what happened. You can flash back to it. That makes it a little bit easier to do the storytelling. If there's still things going on, which is similar to the documentary I'm currently working on, sometimes you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. You don't know what the story is going to be. You're capturing hours and hours and hours and hours of footage. And I actually, for that reason, didn't edit our project. We shot about 80 hours of footage over a year's time, and I didn't see the story anymore. I saw so much and didn't see, again, the end game, that I was like, I can't figure out what's interesting anymore because I know so much about it. And I didn't know how to put this thing together. So we went out and found another editor. And now I'm working on the technical stuff of finishing up the editing, but the story's laid out by another person. Another editor came in and did that job and literally went through all our footage, which is a shame because it ended up costing us more money because he doesn't know the footage. He doesn't know where we were. He has to literally go through it and log it. I think that took almost 3 or 4 months for him just to log the footage, go through interviews and take his notes so he knows where everything is. Yeah.
A lot of footage.
Yeah. I mean, look, I would have had to do that too and note everything where it is and again, log interviews so I know how to find what we need to pull. But at least I would know even just the B-roll a lot better because I shot it, so that would save time there. But in the end, I think it was well worth it just to get a fresh set of eyes. You do it if you're shooting it and you end up editing it and no one else gets involved. I don't want to say I don't want to say it would be bad. That's not the right thing to say, but like, it's not a bad idea to get other eyes on it and just get at least opinions. If not like having someone else edit it, because it's really nice to see other people's view. Like, for example, for someone else to come in and do what they see with the story, then the director can say, wait a minute, that wasn't what I was thinking. I like this part, but I don't like this part. Let's combine those. You know what I mean? It's really nice for an editor to come in and kind of put their own spin on it that hasn't been around it. Again, just fresh eyes to fresh ideas, because you don't know, you get so locked into a story for so long, you might be blinded in a way.
Are you referring to the stories that have not been told yet, or the stories that are currently unfolding?
I think both.
Okay.
Currently unfolding is probably even more helpful because again, someone else comes in and might put a completely different spin on something that you don't even know the story to. But even if it's already completed, it might just be more of a formatting thing, like the way they lay the story out to tell it to everyone that, for the people that haven't heard it before, could be a lot different than the way you present it. And it could be
Right.
better, it could be worse. It's just I'm not saying it's bad to go in on your own or anything. I just think it's a really good idea to get other people to take a look at it because they'll see things you didn't. And again, you're around it for so long that you kind of get tunnel vision. You might get stuck and locked into an idea that's in your head, even as you're going here. If you start editing this and you just all of a sudden like, okay, this is the direction I want to go. It's not it that's not the only direction you can go. So
Right.
it's just with documentary work, there's just so many ways to
Oh,
put
for
things
sure.
together. It's crazy. So with narrative, it's a little different. It's more of like pacing and things like
Sure.
that. The story's written down.
Yeah.
So I think it's super valuable when doing documentary work.
Yeah. My point of view with most of it, like, so I fully understand. So Nick and I are both the directors, kind of per se. We're,
Mhm.
co-directors, kind of like you and I for Zion. But it's very clear this is his story. This is something that he had experienced. This is his own personal experience with Jeff Watkins, which is the main subject, the main character of our story. He's the one that's telling me this, but it is my job to kind of put it in some sort of storytelling structure. You can't
Mhm.
just start from, Jeff was born on this day, this is what happened. It's kind of like, well, first of all, you could, but there's no like there's no I guess angle to, like, for example, like, I want there should be a reason for this documentary. There should be, why is it important that they know who Jeff was and what he
Right.
went through, things like that. So
What's the moral of the story per se, right?
right, so that's kind of how I'm kind of perceiving things, and I understand that. And it's funny, like, at the end, like, I was able, the trickiest part, because and I'll go ahead and say this, I'm sure Nick won't get upset, but he and I were kind of bumping heads throughout this trip because I'm trying to get an understanding of how to tell this story, and he's telling me the story, but he's telling me in a way that he remembers it. He's
Mhm.
not thinking about it from a storytelling point of view, right? So we're both trying to collaborate on this, and so we're, I'm trying to put it into this structure, and he's giving me these pieces of, again, the jigsaw puzzles, and I'm trying to put them in places where I think they can fit. That was just the tricky part. So I'm thinking, like, definitely communication, like communicating with both of us as collaborators, is definitely key. So it's very important that he and I understand we're on the same page of how this story needs to be told, what angle to take for this story. Um, so what we ended up doing was I kind of showed him like a general template outline type deal where, like, look, so we, even documentaries, I feel have a not I feel do have a 3-act structure. Like, it's very relevant in documentary work. And if you watch documentaries, you see it all the time. So I kind of gave him a general template of, in this big section right here, this is the part where we're starting the story. We're introducing our characters. We're letting them know who they are, why they're important, etc. And then we go into this bigger section here right after that, where it's basically they go on a journey. This is what's taking place. These are the good things that happen. These are the bad things that happen. And at the end, you'll usually have the final push, and you'll basically kind of show the results of everything that just happened in that act two,
Mhm.
and I kind of had to physically draw it out for him, and he's starting to see kind of the structure of how things need to go. So the next time he kind of gives me another piece of a jigsaw puzzle, I can easily tell him, well, tell me where that would go.
Right.
And he can see this outline, and he can see what's relevant, how is this relevant to the story that we're telling, and he can kind of plug it in there somewhere. And I think that that's very helpful when it comes to, especially collaborating. And that's not only here, that's on any set. It's important that not only directors, but anybody after that, anyone under the director needs to understand the concept so that everyone's on the same page. And any way that you can, I guess, communicate that to the people that you're working with is always helpful.
Yeah,
it's always super helpful. So I want to get over here to answer a couple of these questions. Doc is sending a question saying, I'm currently editing on the GH5, editing the GH5 footage in vlog, but it's very hard to expose. I got some noise. So on that, I know exactly what he's talking about, which is exactly the same noise you get from the Sony A7S III or A7S 2, but any A7S, any S-Log footage, anytime you shoot log with pretty much any camera, whether it's C-Log, S-Log, V-Log, all those logs, you're always going to get noise in the shadows. Always. When you're shooting flat, the shadows are always going to come out noisy. The reason for that is because you're supposed to color it and grade it, and once you add all the contrast and all that, it all goes away. It's meant to be, and it does look pretty nasty once you see it flat out, but after you add that color and all that, it starts looking prettier and prettier. It really does.
It is hard to expose log footage on a DSLR or mirrorless camera if you don't have an external monitor. It's really hard. I actually I don't recommend it.
Yeah, I think the rule that a lot of people go by is that, especially with Vlog on the GH5, is you overexpose about a stop or two. From what you think if you think it's exposed, you can go a little bit higher. But it's always good to, like you said, it's always good to have external monitors, to use so external monitors, but use your waveforms as well. Yep. That's very, very helpful.
I like to use zebras if I can too. For log, like S-Log 3, I don't know all the different ones and what the values are, Vlog or anything, but with S-Log 3, I think skin tone should be in like the 59 to 61% range, and then bright whites are in the 70, like low 70s. So I'll set my zebra for like 70% or whatever the number actually is. I forget what it is, but 70, let's say 71%. And then when, if your zebra's on, if you're bright whites, if you have reflective whites, or if you have clouds in the sky, you can use those. When those hit 70%, if I expose for those, then that should be a decent exposure for that log footage. But again, that's so hard to do on mirrorless or DSLR cameras if you don't have a bigger screen and you don't have like false color, things like that. False color really helps.
Yeah, I like
being able to throw a LUT on there too, just so you can see what it actually looks like. And then with the LUT, you can, with an external monitor, you can then put the waveform to fit the LUT, so you know what you're exposing for in the end. So I really try to stay away from log footage on just DSLR or mirrorless without external monitors. I completely stay away from it. It's just so hard. It's really hard to do.
Gotcha. So we got a question here from Dean Christie saying, do you find that zebras distract you from your shots? I find myself avoiding zebras at all costs and then underexposing faces, which ends up being a problem for weddings. Zebras are very distracting, actually.
So I keep on zebras and peaking. So I have the red all over the screen for focus, and I'm just so used to it that I'm just so used to it. I never look at a clean screen, like, ever.
I always look at a clean. I only look at a clean screen. Like what I do is I always have a LUT on my monitor, and I make sure that I am and the LUT that I'm usually using is usually a general LUT that I created myself, that I use for my log footage. That's the LUT that I always, as soon as I bring it right back into post, that's the first LUT that I always add to give me a starting point when I'm coloring and grading. And I know that if it looks good with that LUT, then that's fine, because I can edit what I'm shooting right there. So I make sure that my highlights are not clipping, my shadows aren't crushed, etc. So I can always adjust according to what that LUT shows me. But in reality, I'm shooting the S log, you know.
Yeah.
I could bake it in there, but I rather not. I
No,
always
no,
like to
no.
have that flexibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's simple. It's literally just turn on the LUT on in post, but it makes my life a whole lot better, and I don't have to be looking at a nasty flat image all the time.
Yeah. Let me clarify something, because Brandon Fountain is saying, I think he's referring to what I was saying about peaking. I guess it would be if you're trying to focus, but I don't keep it on, though. I mainly use it when I'm setting up. When I say I keep it on always, it's like when I'm running gun type shoots. When I set up an interview, I'll focus, turn it off, and look at a clean screen. But if I'm on the move and always switching shots or switching areas where exposure might be different, I pretty much always leave them on, just because I'd rather be in focus and exposed and maybe be a little off with my composition when I'm moving that quickly than not be focused or exposed and have perfect composition, because that doesn't do me any good, you know? Yeah. So, and I'm just so used to seeing them now as well that it doesn't affect my view of what I'm seeing. If that makes any sense. So gotcha. It's just I don't know, just got used to it, I guess. But
we have a question from Matthew Reynolds. Says, I'm switching to the FS5 from the GH5. And it says, Ariel, I know you have been aiming the other direction with the FS5. Did you have any issues with non-stabilized lenses and keeping the shot steady? Well,
that's not fair. You have an easy rig.
Yeah, I just pop it on my easy rig, guys. You don't have one yet? No, yeah, it was definitely a game changer. The stabilization in the GH5 is second to none. Like, that thing is amazing. And man, I use the cameras for two completely different reasons these days. It's funny because I got a message today. Somebody DM'd me or commented on that I've been using my GH5. They don't even see my FS5 in my feed anymore. And it's not because I only want to shoot on the GH5. Internally, if I could shoot internally on my FS5, I would totally do that all the time. But the fact is, I really don't like the internal footage that I get with my FS5, only external. But to shoot external, I have to take more batteries, the monitor, the case for the monitor, like a bunch of other stuff that just makes my life, you know, my production, the work a lot harder, you know, and I like convenience. But it's not to say that I never want to shoot it. It's only when it's required, you know, and I'm very happy with the GH5. And, you know, and he was more specifically referring to what I posted today, which was the shoot for A Horse of a Different Color, which I've already started shooting on the FS5. I'm just finishing it on the GH5. I'm not going to go ProRes or anything like that because it's just going to be too different, you know? But it's just one of those things where it was more of a convenience choice, and lately it's been more for convenience. But, you know, for the higher ending,
Sorry, we got to say what we're laughing at here because people can't see it. Dean Christie wrote R.I.P. Deborah, which is, for those who don't know, that's the
name that I gave my FS5. No, she's there. She's actually right behind me right here. She's resting, maybe on her deathbed. But no, I'll still take her out for sure on the higher end jobs to get, you know, much more depth in my footage. But yeah.
I mean, that's, you know, we've talked about this on this show plenty, that's why I love the FS7, because, and I don't, even though I have the FS5 as well, I don't take it on very many jobs because I don't want to sometimes be setting up, especially if I'm moving around a lot. And the internal codec of the FS7 is so much better than the FS5. Yeah. I wish it was in the FS5, man. That would be probably the best camera out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So Joey wrote, it says Joey. It says, I'm shooting a low budget fire truck commercial soon. Because it's just a truck, I'm having a hard time coming up with camera angles, the movements that are interesting to watch. And then he also added, have either of you ever shot video showcasing something like a vehicle under a low budget? Do you have some suggestions on how to keep it interesting?
Tight shots.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, so if you have one wide shot, there's only so many wide shots that you can grab on any shoot at any location. But if you get tied up on details of the trucks, that's what you
Yeah.
give me a fire truck. Oh
Oh
my
man, there's plenty
gosh,
on there. Yeah.
I'll go crazy on that thing.
Get some depth down like the long
Yeah.
side of it, like get the intricacies, like real tight shots, almost like macro style. Like
Oh
get some
yeah.
cool stuff.
You know, it'd be cool depending on the size of their station. If it's at the fire truck station, turn off all the lights, put one spotlight. Like if you could turn on one light to light up only the truck, I don't know if you can make that happen, but look at that lighting, how they have it set up there. That'd look very interesting. Perhaps get some fog up in there. If you can get a fog machine.
Good
I don't
call.
know the style of your video, but you can also get these. I still have cans of aerosol that you can just spray all over the place and create some nice mist and fog. It's going to look very interesting, and it's super low budget. Those cans are very, very cheap. You can find those over at I don't know if it's aerosol.com or something like that. I know they're on Instagram. They're very active on Instagram. Really, really cool. Yeah, Dean Christie said
fog and turn on the lights on the fire truck too. That'd be sick.
Oh, that'd be really, really cool. But yeah, there's just so many things you could do with the fire truck. Just get creative, zoom in, use close-up shots and get details of the trucks. Make sure that the truck is clean the day before so it's nice and shiny. The logo of it, I'm sure that station has their own logo for their unit. But yeah,
I like the comments and questions, guys. Keep them coming. Getting a little off our semi topic we had today, but I like this. Keep them coming. But so I'll go to another one. Matthew Reynolds wrote something else about him talking about his FS7. He goes, "I totally hear you. I have an A7S II as well. So having everything under the same brand was useful to me. So I'm used to that sensor stabilization though." So I'd be interested. It is very nice to have it under kind of one umbrella. Like I thought the same thing, and being able to shoot all Sony stuff with my most of my client work is what I do. But the color schemes, or this color not schemes, that's not the right word. The color why am I at a loss for words here? In each camera, the color
color depth,
color gammas in each camera are not the same, which is so annoying.
Yeah, you told me that. I found that interesting.
Oh man. So Matthew Reynolds, I'd love to hear, shoot me a message on Instagram or something. I'd love to hear, or even if on here, if you know them offhand, what you are using for colors if you're not shooting in log. I don't tend to do that again when I'm running around on different cameras and trying to expose all those. It's just I'll miss shots. So if it's interviews or something, I'll go that route and I can match them a lot easier. But if you're shooting in like picture profiles, send me what you're using, because I love talking to people about that, because trying to find ones that match perfectly is pretty much impossible, but you can get them close. That is a bummer though with these cameras. You would think that, hey, I'm shooting on Canon and it's all going to look the same, but that's just not how it works.
That's interesting. I found that interesting. I wonder if the GH5 and the EVO 1 would have that same issue.
Maybe not.
But that's why
when you go all Panasonic.
Yeah. But that's why it helps to be able to know how to tweak the colors and stuff like that, so you don't run into that issue. Not to say that it's always going to come out perfect, but at least you can do something about it.
Yep.
But yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Do we have any other?
I think we're caught up.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're caught up. But guys, feel free to send some more stuff. Otherwise, what?
Yeah. So going back to communication.
Yeah.
What was I don't know if you've ever been able to direct a crew, or kind of were in a place where you needed to kind of communicate.
Yep.
The vision that you're having with someone. Is there any interesting way that could occur? Because I'm always trying to find better ways to communicate the vision that I'm kind of trying to have with whoever it is that I'm working with, So I don't know if you've been in that situation.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to think. So I have two different thoughts in my head right now. One is physical communication on set, um, and I'm thinking to more of event style shooting though. So a lot of fast pace. You have somebody, a high profile person or two that you have to capture what they're doing. Maybe you have the attendees, you have to capture what they're doing. You have multiple shooters on set, or maybe you have an audio guy or different things. I'm just thinking about communication there, and the biggest way to work through that is, and this will go for like narrative stuff too, is pre-production, like just knowing the schedule, knowing the situation, knowing what possible things can happen and who should be where when those occur. They never work out perfectly. Then you make those adjustments on set. But I think knowing that stuff up front and communicating all that prior to shooting something that's more run and gun or live event style stuff, is one important thing. And then physical communication on set if you have comms. If you have comms like in your ear to be able to communicate. But that, again, that's more event when things are happening on the move. But if we go to like narrative stuff, let's say working on Zion. Communication wise, I mean, we started chatting through, a phone call or a Skype session. Then we created a Google Doc, and then we sat down when I was in Miami, and then we didn't just go out there and shoot it. We had a plan, and that changed throughout that day, and then it changed a lot more in post. So it doesn't always work out perfectly, but you got to be able to sit down and communicate. So I think overall, I really think pre-production is the biggest form of communication. And it's funny that I'm saying that because Daka just wrote, can you make an episode about pre-production and storytelling?
That's essentially the title for this episode. So it was definitely important that you and I sat down and kind of hash out the plan for Zion, because we needed to make sure that we only had one day of shooting. We're not wasting our time. So we have to have the same vision. And we did. Unfortunately, the day of, it just did not pan out that way. So we kind of, it was tough. It was tough. Actually, now thinking about it in retrospect, it would have been helpful to have a plan B for that, because I didn't know that we were going to be faced with the issue that we had.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't foresee that at all.
And actually, if I had known that, it would have actually not have been very hard to come out with a plan B story, but everything was catered for plan A, including the questions that we asked and everything. And that's actually a real big reason why, like, so on this trip that I just took for a horse of a different color, we kind of did a redirect, so I don't want to give too much away, but the story is basically kind of shifting. It's shifting a little bit because when I first heard of the story, it's basically been like 2.5 years now since we started this project or something like that. And the story that I remember, I always thought in the back of my head was like, man, I wish it had a little something extra, and I finally found that something extra, and I kind of showed it to Nick, and he loved it. And he said, essentially that's what we're doing. And I'm like, not really, from what I'm remembering from the interviews that we've done and all that stuff. So we started talking about that, and kind of did that redirect. And the last several interviews that we did, we kind of catered it for that direction. Essentially, it's a lot of the same questions, but formed in a different way, trying to get different responses, etc. So being open to that, and again, this is specifically to like documentary filmmaking and storytelling. All this stuff is new, man. All this stuff is stuff that we're learning, and how we're kind of not sidestepping it, but how we're kind of dealing with it and moving forward with it. So
I think this is all very, very normal in documentary work. I mean, again, the one I've shot, we shot 80 hours of stuff. We had a plan. There was always an outline. The outline always changed. And then the same thing in post. We set a story, and then we show it to some people in the industry, and that would help us try to either distribute our stuff or something like that. And they're like, no, you know, this isn't interesting enough. Why did you put this in here? Why don't you take this out? Like, it's just still changing. It's still changing. So it's not, I don't think that's anything that you can physically work around and in any way. But like you said, it's just stuff you got to be prepared for. If you can have a plan B or C or D, that's awesome. But again, with Zion and our issues, and I don't know if we've discussed exactly what that is or if we want to, so I'm just going to keep saying our issue for the day for now. But, you know, it was the reason we used him as our subject, and for it not to work out was not even like a thought, you know, that was, so again, we'll discuss that later, but
that's true.
So, you know what, I don't even think there's, in that situation, our plan B wouldn't have been to work around what we needed to work around. It would have been something completely different. So I don't think we would have got around that either way. So, you know, our plan B came in post when you completely kind of tore the story apart and restructured it, which was amazing. So that was plan B, and you killed it.
That was plan B, man. There had to be a plan B or there was no story.
Right.
But yeah, sometimes things like that have to come into play. So Dean Christie writes, with wedding videos, communicating with the photographers ahead of time makes the day of much easier. Every photographer has a horror story of how a videographer would stand in the way of every shot. Yeah, that's me. I'm sure you've heard I'm not a big fan of shooting weddings. Most of the time I'm shooting weddings for friends and family, and I don't charge. I've said this many times. But man, do I it's and I don't mean to be a jerk, man, but I just I don't know why I have such a and nothing against like wedding photographers or anything like that. Like I have, I guess it was the first person that actually like kind of explained to me how that stuff is supposed to go, how videographers are come second to the photographer and all that stuff. And I'm like, man, this self-serving photographer's trying to explain to me that my job is not as important as his and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, get out of here. So I do make sure that I usually don't plan it ahead of time, but I do ask them, hey, am I in your way? You want me to move? Whatever. But I usually get along with the photographers. But there was this one time where one of my friends asked me to do a video, and sure, I do a video, and they had a photographer. They actually hired a photographer, and I was in their way most of the time.
It's weird when people in the collaborative field aren't good at collaborating. Never understood that, but
are not good at collaborating.
Yeah. Like you're saying, the photographer thinking that their job is more important. It's like, look, we're all here to capture something. Let's work together on this.
I think it goes both ways. I think it was the way that he told me that I'm not as important, and then the way that I kind of just let that get to me, and now I have this attitude about wedding photographers. But no, I met a lot of them. They're very, very nice people. It was just that one experience, but no, yeah, I think it is important that they do communicate so that they work well together and all that. So, but yeah, I think I think it's very important communicating like that. Yep. Let me see. Listen to a No Film School podcast. How dare I know. And they mentioned that at every level, storytelling directors have to learn how to communicate within their limits, no matter how big of a budget.
Yeah, how to work within their limits, no matter the budget. I think it's the same thing we were saying earlier. Is like, there's always going to be issues, and you know, it doesn't matter if you have $1 million to work with or not. There's always going to be something. So you just have to know how to fix it. You have to know how to work around and be on the fly adjustable, you know, and collaborate with everyone else to make that happen. You can't just kind of take the reins on everything and do everything yourself. It's a collaborative field, and communication's key.
Yeah. Dean Christie also adds, photographers are some of the worst people the day of the wedding. One photographer wanted me to stay away for the first look, and then they would let me film a second look. Heck no. How about you do the second look? I'll do the first look. I'm capturing motion here, dude. They're not going to react the same way twice. Heck no. Yeah, I would have never accepted that. If the bride asked me to do that, fine. But I'm not going to take that from weddings, man. Heck no.
No, thanks.
Dude, the first look, that first reaction, they're not going to act it out twice. No. The first one is organic. You never stay away from that. I'm sorry. See, that's exactly what I mean about wedding photographers, man. Like, they literally, like, it's hard to get along with them sometimes. But yeah.
Anything else?
It's, yeah. Before I continue to go off on wedding photographers, no offense to any wedding photographers here. You guys, I've gotten along with a lot of...
Our watch count just dropped tremendously.
Yeah, for some reason, we have a good amount of people watching currently.
Did you tell me to sell?
I told you to put that on silent.
I only silenced one of them, I guess. That's the problem with 2 phones.
Who has 2 phones?
I'm a businessman. I like to think.
Do you use a belt clip?
No. Thank God.
2 phones on each side. 1 phone on each side. That'd be funny. But yeah, man. I'm super glad. Like, at the end of the trip, we're able to kind of find that common ground, Nick and I, for A Horse of a Different Color. And what we left with was that I will be sending him kind of an outline. I drew it out generally, but I'm going to make a nicer one of the story structure, a template, and he was trying to show me, well, look, I did all this research, and I'm like, that's great, but we need to put this in a story. We got to kind of plug that in somewhere, and so, yeah, it's definitely different knowing the story and then knowing how to tell the story. You were there, you experienced it. Now let me help you kind of package that into a nice movie and to kind of help display it. But it's definitely important that he understands where I'm coming from, and I understand where he's coming from as well. Yeah,
it's good. Glad you guys worked it out to make a nice film.
Yeah, and there was actually something that that I kind of had to. It's funny because this has been a learning experience for him, right? And we had a conversation also where he was trying not to make certain people look bad, right? And he wanted to stay away from certain questions and this and that, and I kind of had to. I was telling him, I had to explain to him that, in documentary filmmaking, we don't hold back. You want to get that juicy information, whether you use it or not. It's a completely different story, but you always want to capture it. And see if it'll fit in later on. Maybe you could use it. Maybe they would allow it. But even then, like, it's stuff like, I gotta say, and this comes from I posted. I know you saw the Zion post that I did. That I was actually very, very popular, where Zion was skating and he fell, and I continued to shoot. Stuff like that, like, that's documentary filmmaking. But a lot of people thought I was kidding, but I'm very serious. Even when things go down, you have to keep shooting, because that's that drama stuff. That's the stuff that kind of makes your film impacting oftentimes. So
when you get kicked out of somewhere, that's when you keep rolling.
Oh yeah,
it's like
when they tell you to stop recording, you keep recording. Up until they threaten you or something like that, or they, I don't know. It's things like that. Whatever story you're telling in documentary, you keep rolling, man. I'm gonna make a shirt. Keep rolling.
Keep rolling.
Come on now. Trademark. Nobody can take that.
That's awesome.
Gonna go on iFilmmaker.
I like it.
iFilmmakerpodcast.com. Store coming soon. Just keep rolling.
/shop or /shop.
Maybe make a mug out of it as well.
Nice.
Let's see. Just jumped into this live stream. Interested in hearing about each of your workflow of new projects, initial contact with the client, then how you estimate and contract from there prior to the shoot. I think we've done a couple of episodes like that. You can check those out. We've talked about contracts. We've talked about getting new clients. We've talked about all that stuff. I think each of those are kind of like individual episodes. You can check that out over at iFilmmakerpodcast.com. We have a whole list of episodes that we've done. You can search those out. I believe by keywords. I think there's a search bar on that page. But
we definitely talked about those. Yeah, contracts, estimating jobs. I don't know about initial contact with the client. We might. That's probably in there too, and how we communicate with them. I don't know if that's an individual.
Yeah, my biggest tip
episode.
My biggest tip for initial contact with any client or potential client when discussing a new project, never, ever, ever give a quote at the meeting. Because the reason why I say that is because, for one, I think it's more professional when you send them a proper estimate for the project. Two, you can go back and think about, because what happens oftentimes when they're asking you for this and that and this and that, and they say, how much will all of this is always how it happens. They're telling you what they want, and then they're going to follow up with, how much is all this going to cost? You kind of feel pressured to give them a price on the moment, but the problem is, every single person, nobody wants to undercharge, nobody wants to overcharge. So it's always best that you think about that a lot more. So it's always saying, let me take this back to the office. Always say office, don't say your house or anything. Let me take this back to my office and kind of review what, these aspects of your project, and I can get back to you. I can email you by today with the proper estimate. Always tell them by today, don't make them wait, with the proper estimate for this project. And that way, you have more time to think about it, so you don't overcharge or undercharge.
Yeah, there's a couple things there. I mean, putting it on paper, for one, is the best thing to do anyway. You don't want to just shout out a number and then there's no record of it. If they want to say you said something else, I mean, not that that's going to happen often, but it's just good to have it on paper in an email. It's always, you can always reference it. And like you said, you have time to like go through and make sure you're including everything you need to. And unless you're like a wedding photographer, and you can take 1,000 whatever pictures and you can supply 100, or there's no, usually with any video production, the requests are they vary so much. You can't, there's no one number you can slap on it, so you gotta go think about it.
Only a couple times have they kind of indirectly demanded that I give them a price at the meeting. So I gave them a very high price. And I told them, like, unless I review this longer, like I don't want to give you a wrong number. So I know that at least with this price, I know that we can for sure make it happen, right? But it might not be this much. So I just need to kind of review it a little bit more. I've
never had anyone demand it like that. If they are, then that's weird.
Well, no. That's why I said indirectly. So they were just telling me that they kind of need to get back to their boss,
right?
Like in the next hour or so,
right?
So I kind of tell them, all right, well, I'll give you this. This is a rough estimate, and I just sent them with that. But I told them I can send you a more accurate one tonight once I review all this stuff and see what it'll all entail. So cool. Jared Hillhouse, welcome back, dude. Kind of quiet there, but I think this is a good episode. Communication, we talked a lot about a lot of different things.
We did.
It was communication, storytelling, pre-production, and a little bit of tech talk there with regards to vlog. Good episode back. Let me know what you guys think about the whole Ask Me Something segments kind of in between these episodes. They're much easier to make. And they're fun. Where I just basically answer your questions that you guys give me on Instagram stories, and we just go through those. Anyways, I think that's where we're gonna end this episode. It was a good one. It was a fun one. Good to be back on the podcast with you guys. Thanks for everyone that joined us and that joined us live. And remember, those of you that didn't, make sure you get subscribed over at iFilmmaker Podcast YouTube channel, and go over to iFilmmakerpodcast.com to check out all the other episodes. You guys been asking questions about different topics that we've already covered, and you can go and find them over at iFilmmakerpodcast.com. You just released a video over on Jersey Filmmaker YouTube channel with the Lytra.
Those lights we picked up
those are pretty cool,
man. They are very cool, and I just haven't had the time to do like a full review of them. So I finally got to show them off a little bit. And I mean, it's just sometimes they just don't fit into the schedule of, man, this stuff gets crazy, man. You know, we can't get a podcast in. I can't get the right episode in. Then you get, client work. So I finally got that done. I'm glad I got that done for those guys, because they did hand me a couple lights to take home. But it was more so,
when you were going to do that.
Yeah, it was more so, I wouldn't call it a huge review. It was more so just an overview of what they are and what they do. I didn't dive into like picking it apart as far as how good or bad they are, or comparing them to anything. But it was a good overview to show what they can do and some cool stuff they have coming out. So thanks to those guys at Lytra for handing those over.
Cool. Joey says, thanks for sprucing up the middle of his workday. You're welcome, dude. Thanks for everyone that joined us. Hopefully you can catch us again on the next episode of the iFilmmaker podcast. Until then, Mr. Cervatelli,
I'll see you next time.
Later.
Peace.